Tyler just made you the presenter, so you can share.
Okay. I see the PowerPoint that's from Antonio, right?
Can you see it? Okay.
Yes, I see it. All right, looks like we are good to get started. So thank you for attending and welcome everyone. Before we introduce our speakers, we're going to do a quick introduction about our organization, starting with AAPM and then EFOMP, and then we'll go through some intros for our 3 speakers today. We go to the next slide. So my name is Tyler Hornsby. I'll be introducing the AAPM for our webinar today. This is the American Association of Medical Physicists. It is the largest professional organization in North America for physicists working in diagnostic, therapeutic, and nuclear medicine, as well as radiation safety. Our purpose is to advance medical physics and healthcare through research, education, and professional development. And we consist of over 9,000 members in 87 countries. And our key activities are listed here. So this webinar will be looking at promoting research and innovation in medical physics. Next slide. Just a brief introduction about our subcommittee, who is co-hosting the webinar today. We are the GEC-RSC, or Global Early Career Research Subcommittee. Our goal is to extend global research and scientific innovation activities to early career researchers and really drive the next generation of medical physicists. So here, early career researchers include, but are not limited to, graduate students, residents, postdocs, and fellows engaged in research within the first 5 years of an independent position. So overall, we work on connecting and engaging in internationally based research-driven early career research and opportunities. Next slide. Briefly, we are working on a global early career research network. If interested, we have our QR code here. Feel free to screenshot and join. Through this, we're building a early career research global network with the goal of sharing knowledge, such as open source research tools within the community, as well as providing updates on AAPM and similar organizations events such as this, which can be very helpful for early career researchers in the field of medical physics. Thank you.
So hello everybody, let me introduce you quickly about EFOMP. So EFOMP, the European Medical Physics, European Society of Medical Physics Organization, was founded in 1980 as the umbrella organization, bringing together 37 national member organizations from all across Europe, as well as individual associate members from all over the world and 39 company members. EFOMP mission is to harmonize and advance education, training, and professional development of medical physics through Europe. And one of EFOMP's initiative was the Special Interest Group for Early Career, which was created to empower the next generation of medical physicists, bringing together students, young researchers, and professionals with less than 10 years of experience. So we currently have more than 230 members from both Europe and non-European countries. And our group provides a space for young professionals to connect, collaborate, and grow through different activities, including running the mentoring, enabling, and mobility program, which connect early career physicists with experienced mentors, contributing to special issues for the European Journal of Medical Physics, Physica Medica, and EFOMP's newsletter, and to collaborate with other early career groups from international organizations, including our collaboration with AAPM, a Global Early Career Research Subcommittee, and also organizing the early career track within the European Congress of Medical Physicists. And in this, I would like to invite you to join us for the next version of this conference, which will take place in next September in Valencia. And I think it will be a good opportunity for all of us to be together in person. So I invite you all to join. And now I would like to invite again Taylor to present our first speaker for the session.
Great, thank you. So our first speaker today is going to be presenting from the perspective of government. We have Dr. James Renaud. He is a research officer at the National Research Council of Canada. He specializes in radiation dosimetry standards and detector development for radiotherapy, with recent emphasis on emerging treatment modalities such as ultra-high dose rate flash radiotherapy. He is also an adjunct professor at Carleton University, where he co-supervises graduate students in medical physics. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for that introduction. Happy to be here today. Going to give you the perspective of one individual working within one nation's government's department. So just keep that in mind as I go through and I talk about my own experiences. There we go. So so I work for the National Research Council, NRC for short. We are Canada's federal science and tech organization. We were founded just over 100 years ago, and we're spread pretty evenly across the country from coast to coast. Amongst the multitude of science and tech activities that the NRC is involved in, I'm going to focus in on one particular aspect, which is metrology. So we serve as Canada's National Metrological Institute, and so metrology being the science of measurement. And I know what you're thinking. You're wondering, why do we need metrology? If you remember anything from my talk today, it's that you can only make it as well as you can measure. Within NRC's metrology organization, we have approximately 12 groups, some very fundamental, time, mass, dimensional. I belong to what is known as the ionizing radiation standards, and we're involved in just what it sounds. So different aspects of ionizing radiation, including medical dosimetry. We're located in sunny Ottawa, Ontario. There's a building. Our activities are distributed approximately in 3 different areas. So if you kind of think of radiation therapy, protection, processing as different kind of faces on a cube, most individuals will spend most of their time, if not all the time, on any given surface. But life gets really interesting if you start looking around the corner. And we're fortunate enough here at NRC that we kind of exist at the interface between all 3 of these worlds. And we concern ourselves with radionuclides, neutrons, security applications, so on and so forth. Perhaps most relevant to medical physics are some of our labs. We have cobalt capabilities, X-rays, brachy, a number of linear accelerators, both medical and research, as well as the development of the EGS Monte Carlo code system. Perhaps less directly relevant to medical physics, but still pretty interesting, if I may say. Radionuclides, radiochemistry, security applications. So today I'm just going to focus on the medical physics aspect of it. And all of our research can kind of be dumped into one of 3 buckets, so to speak. The first being standards. So our raison d'etre is to maintain and develop primary dose standards for medical applications. So just as clinical reference dosimetry is the starting point for all treatments, primary dose standards for the starting point for all clinical reference dosimetry. And so water calorimetry is really our workhorse in that respect. We realize the gray from primary primary definition based on the radiation-induced temperature rise we measure. So conceptually pretty straightforward, but conceptually the details can get pretty complicated pretty quickly. But standards don't necessarily have to strictly be primary. We're also kind of trending in the direction of developing transfer standards. So whether it be, as you see on the right, alanine, which is a chemical dosimeter that is perfectly suited for kind of a mailing dosimetry auditing capability, as well as on your left, you'll see a deployable calorimeter that we can then send to clinics and have the clinical physicists use more or less independently. The second kind of big bucket is the protocols. So those protocols, so why do we need protocols in the first place? Well, essentially guidance needs to develop as technology kind of evolves. And for the last 25, 30 years, individuals, researchers from the NRC have been leading the development of these protocols, not just in drafting or conceptually kind of putting them together, but also generating a lot of the foundational data upon which they're based. The third big bucket is kind of what I just call dosimetry development. This is, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, this is the fun stuff. This is the skunk works. This is the developing the detectors and the methodologies for emerging technologies. I'm not going to dive into any of these things, you know, in any sort of technical way, but one of our big focuses as of recent years has been ultra high dose radiotherapy. So what drives medical physics research in general? It really depends on what sector you're talking about. Success and value are derived very differently depending on whether you're talking about academia, where it might be, you know, novelty or funding, number of students or graduations, publications. If you're talking about industry, it might be more about market needs, scalability, compliance, intellectual property. Here at the NRC, we kind of see ourselves as being at the interface, kind of somewhere in between, certainly not competing with anyone. We like to think of ourselves as enablers, and we're really focused on things like, you know, regulation, safety, traceability, international harmonization, et cetera. So in practice, how do our research groups operate? We're a group of about 20 or so individuals in the ionizing radiation standards, roughly a 50-50 mix of researchers and technicians, plus a ton of students, visitors, et cetera. Day to day, it's a blend of research, service, delivery, and international engagement, like this presentation. So research projects are often executed within smaller, you know, subgroups within our larger group, based on interests, skills, need, expertise. And we have a very heavy reliance on students, postdocs. We have long-lived facilities, decades, on the scale of decades. And external collaborations are at the core, really essential to all the operations that we do here. Collaborations come in the form of working with universities. I'm an adjunct at Carleton University, which is the local university here. Having students come in, bringing their energy, their ideas, innovation. This is essential. Working with clinics, you know, whether it's validation or clinical translation, getting those reality checks can't be really expressed how valuable that is. Working with industry, whether it's in the form of R&D support or perhaps independent testing. And finally, standards bodies, which really comes back again to that harmonization, widespread adoption, and just building confidence in what it is we do in general. The typical training path that leads to a career at the NRC, so prerequisite is a PhD, and then upon graduation, the clock kind of starts ticking to get into an entry-level job. So you have 5 years, essentially, a window in which to put your foot in the door. There are two kind of typical paths. There's a postdoctoral research fellowship, or there's a more common research associate program, and both of which require the candidate to demonstrate an ability to perform original, high-quality research in their chosen field. If you do manage to get in through one of these pathways, you'll be on a contract for 2-3 years, after which you may get converted to a permanent kind of position, which we then refer to as a research officer. So that's what I do. Some of the challenges and realities in my life as a government employee is that our funding structure is completely different from academia. We can't apply for grants. I mean, we are part of the government. Most of the grants come from the government. There's an internal kind of conflict of interest there. Although there are funding mechanisms internal to the NRC in which we can leverage to obtain additional research funding. We don't have as many students as academia, so progress tends to be a little bit slower. We have less visibility at places like conferences. So we're less concerned about, total novelty as opposed to really kind of diving into the important small little details that perhaps other groups may be less interested in. And operationally, we're the government, we're humongous. We're not as agile as industry players can be, but we're more in a, we exist, basically our mandate is not changing. We're always there to support the Canadian community, and so yeah, we don't really need to be as agile, I guess, in that respect. So my general advice to trainees is to identify mentors across sectors. So when I say sectors, find yourself mentors working in industry, whether it's government, academia, beyond just your primary research supervisor. Don't put your eggs all in one basket. You might have some preferences, but be open to the possibilities. Build collaborations early. So if you're in your graduate studies right now, if there are opportunities to build collaborations, get to it, because those are the relationships that will lead to further opportunity down the line. And be known as, a spark plug. And what I mean by that is basically be known as the person who makes things happen. Bring that, energy, enthusiasm. If you're interested in a particular sector, learn to speak the language. And what I mean by speak the language is, if you're interested in working at a national lab like, the NRC, learn to talk about things in terms of, uncertainties or traceability or et cetera. If you're interested in the private sector, learn more, maybe more about project management or IP or, et cetera. And perhaps somewhat more philosophical, when those bad times come, as they invariably do from time to time, always trust in your talent and your creativity to get you through. So my takeaway, why do government careers in medical physics research matter? Government's there to provide that continuity, knowledge continuity, data continuity over the scale of decades. We're not moving fast, but we move with purpose, and we move with a high level of detail. Everything's documented. We have stuff lying around here from the 50s that we will never throw out, and more than once have been very happy to know I can dust off some books or reports or even an old piece of equipment to reproduce some legacy data sets. So we enable, government roles. They were really concerned with regulation and safe clinical innovation, adoption of new technologies. We somehow exist at the interface of many areas of research, but also many sectors. We're not, again, not competing with anyone. I have no vested interest in publishing a whole lot. When I publish, I want to just make sure that it is as good a publication as it can possibly produce. And in general, government needs people who value long-term impact. We don't move fast, but we move, I would say, with purpose. And so with that, I'm going to wrap up, and thank you all for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Renaud, for this interesting presentation and for all the tips. We will come back to you at the end of our session for more questions. And now we will move to our second speaker, Dr. Michel Moreau. I will let you share your screen, and in the meantime, I will introduce you quickly. So Dr. Michel is is a medical physicist with a background spanning engineering physics, academic research, and industry research and development. He has held a series of industry roles focused on radiotherapy innovation and development, and he currently serves as a research scientist at Elekta. So please, the floor is yours. You can start your presentation.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, or good evening, whichever applies to you. So I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me to this webinar today. I'm very happy to share my experience as an industry physicist with you. I hope that you find this valuable. So I will start just by giving you a brief background about myself. I don't generally like to talk about myself, but my background was, my engineering degree was in physics. Excuse me, my undergraduate degree was in engineering physics from Polytechnique in Montreal. My master's degree was in physics at the University of Guelph, where I did some MRI work there. My PhD was in medical biophysics from Western University, where I did some X-ray imaging, dual energy X-ray imaging. And after all that imaging work, I transitioned from diagnostic to therapy, where I did a postdoc at William Boma Hospital in Detroit, looking at the fine motion of a medical linear accelerator, looking at the effect of flex and how the motion deviates from a perfect ideal circular motion. Then I went into industry, and I spent the rest of my life in industry. I started at ADAC just before ADAC was acquired by Philips. I was a developer there working on their treatment planning system, Pinnacle, that some people know. I went to tomotherapy in the research group there in treatment planning as well. I went to Prowess for research and development activities on their treatment planning system again, Panther. And then I went to Elekta for many years, and I was in the research group there working on their treatment planning system, Monaco. And here's the meat of this presentation. I was asked to talk about what a medical physicist might do in industry and in a research group, probably. Well, on this slide here, I'm showing a few examples of what you would do if you were working in industry as a physicist. You solve problems. You solve product-related problems, right? A company needs to sell product, they need to develop product, and we solve these problems. A perfect example is a dose calculation algorithm. It is one thing to understand the physics and the math behind a dose calculation algorithm, but it is a very different story when it comes to actually coding an algorithm like this. You're dealing with a voxelated system or pixelated system, and you have to digitize everything. And there's a lot of questions that need to be answered. You encounter all kinds of problems, and that's a perfect example of something a physicist might do in industry. I should specify that by the way you saw my background, it's all in it's mostly in therapy now. I started my degrees in diagnostic, but now everything you will hear from me is about therapy and all software also. So I won't talk about diagnostic or hardware, but many of the things that I see would also apply to diagnostic or hardware. So IMRT is also another very, very perfect example of where physicists get involved. Intensity modulated radiation therapy is a technique that if you're not a therapy physicist, it's a technique that is used to optimize treatment plans. And 25 years ago, there was a whole lot of research being done in IMRT. What optimization algorithm should you be using to solve these problems? What objective functions should you use? How do you write these objective functions? Do you want to use a fluence smoothing objective functions when you optimize a fluence map? Do you want to use an aperture smoothing objective when you optimize a step and shoot beam? You optimize the apertures of a beam. There's a lot of work that needed to be done there. Then there's all these segmentation algorithms to turn these optimized fluence maps into step and shoot beams or into arc beams like a VMAT beam. Lots of experimentation needs to be done there, and that's a typical task that would be assigned to a medical physicist in a research group. Also, we all hear about artificial intelligence these days, machine learning, deep learning, AI. These are making their way into radiation therapy for image segmentation primarily right now. There's a lot of work being done along those lines and with very good results. Model-based segmentation is another segmentation algorithm that I was involved in. For those of you who don't know what model-based segmentation is, it's It's a 3D version of the active contour algorithm, also known as the snake algorithm. And there was a lot of research that needed to be done there too. You've got these internal energies, these external energies. You have to come up with proper ways of expressing these things, the right equations, and solving an optimization problem again. So a lot of very cool algorithmic stuff that you would be doing if you worked in a research group in industry like this. The modeling for radiation therapy, again, if you're a physicist, you're a medical physicist, you understand X-ray physics, you understand how linear accelerators work, you can create a good beam model, and then you can write the software to do all the modeling for a specific LINAC. Perfect tasks for medical physicists are listed here. What comes out of a research group is usually non-production ready code. We cut corners round a little bit, the stuff that's not so important from a research standpoint. Corners will be cut round. We don't put a UI or a very cheap UI. And we basically create a proof of concept of something that works. If you will file patents, also if you work in academia, you get public grants and you make your knowledge public by publishing papers. When you work in industry, you invest, the company invests in coming up with novel ideas, and they want to protect their ideas, which makes sense. So you'll file patents instead of publishing papers generally in industry. You may also find an advanced development group in industry, and not it's very similar to what research would do. But generally in the advanced development group, you will finish off the research product that are done in research. You will clean up the corners that were cut around in research. You will put a user interface or a decent user interface in front of it. And you will create some more production ready code that will be easier to integrate into the clinical product afterwards. You will develop all these prototypes for future product features that are usually the more algorithmic, the bigger features that may take a significant amount of time to develop. Even though there's no researchy component to these things, they may still take a fair amount of time. And when you work in a development group, you don't like bigger features that take more time because they're more unpredictable in terms of when the software will be released. And so because a company needs to announce when products will be released, right? Every company does that. So a development group doesn't like uncertainty. And so the advanced development group here will pick up the bigger features that are more unpredictable. So that's, again, stuff that you would be doing if you worked in industry in a research group as a physicist. And the code that comes out of an advanced development group is usually production ready or very close to being production ready. It's fairly easy to, it should be fairly easy to integrate into the clinical product afterwards. Other things that you might do is collaborate with external researchers. You could be a co-investigator on a grant. They could be external agency grants or company grants. Your company can give grants to research collaborators, and you would work on these grants. The company will assign resources to these grants, and you may participate in these things. Generally, the company will develop and provide research products to these research collaborators, these external collaborators, and you will support these people, and you'll be involved more or less in the work that's being done. The external researchers will perform all their research. They will publish their results. You may be an author on the paper in these cases. There may still be patents filed also as a result of the work being done. And here I'm listing two examples that I was involved in over the years. The first one is the MBS, the model-based segmentation that I talked about earlier. This is when I was at Philips. All of the MBS was developed by Philips Research, which is completely separate from the Philips Radiation Oncology division. At Philips Research, at some point, somebody had the idea of doing something like this, thinking that it could be useful at some point. They built a prototype. They worked out all the math. They solved all the problems. They built a proof of concept. There was no clean UI in front of it, but they did exactly what a research group does. They filed a bunch of patents to try to protect all their ideas. And then we, in the radiation oncology department, we found out at some point that Philips Research had this MBS code sitting on shelves somewhere. So we picked it up. We integrated it into Pinnacle. We cleaned up the little corners that they had cut around. We put a UI in front of it. and we released it as a clinical product. This was a very nice collaboration between a research group and a development group. The Elekta MRI LINAC machine is also a huge collaboration that lasted 20 years before it turned into a clinical product. Elekta provided the LINAC, Philips provided the MRI, and the University Medical Center in Utrecht did all of the clinical work, all the research. They had a lab in which Elekta gave them a free LINAC, some research LINAC. Philips gave them a free MRI. They had to make those two things work together, turn the beam on while the imager is working and so forth. And if you are a physicist, you know very well that an MRI and a LINAC are two machines that are highly allergic to each other, right? There's electrons flying around in a LINAC, and there's a strong magnetic field in the MRI. Those two things don't work together very well. And so there was a lot of work that needed to be done to make sure that these two machines could coexist and work together. So this is a huge collaboration between research and industry, between academia and industry. Something else that you would do, you would support the product development group. You will answer questions about the more significant algorithms in the product. Often you're the subject matter expert in these algorithms. So you answer all these questions. You will write the technical documents. Since you're the only one who really has a deep understanding of these things, you need to write down your knowledge. So if you get hit by a bus, your knowledge remains there. Somebody else can pick it up after you leave. If you will train the trainers are the people who are going to go and train the customers afterwards. It's fun to do. I enjoyed doing some of that. I've done some over the years. You will also participate in developing a testing strategy for these bigger algorithms, especially the ones that you worked on, because again, you're the subject matter expert, so you have the most knowledge, so you can design some good testing strategy to make sure that the product works well, is tested well. So those are all things that you do as a physicist in industry, and frankly, I've enjoyed everything I've done myself over the years of all these, like last 25 years. I find it very interesting. For the most part, everything. There's always ups and downs here and there, of course, but for the most part, it's been very interesting. And working in industry in general, when you are in the medical device industry, you probably know that it's very heavily regulated, of course. There's our medical devices. You got to follow all these procedures that are set by all of these regulatory authorities in each geography, region, country. The European Union has their own standards. The US FDA has their own standards. Health Canada has their standards. Japan, China, and most countries of the world have their standards and procedures that we have to follow. If you want to be able to sell your medical devices in these countries, you have to follow their procedures. Of course, all the regions have procedures that are very similar. They're all designed to ensure safety and efficacy in products. But you still have to have people in the company that are specialized in regulatory affairs to make sure that the development of all these products meet all of these standards for all these countries. And the low-income countries that don't have as many resources or as much resources that they can, they will usually follow another country, a high-income country standards, and they will see, for instance, if a product is cleared for sales in the European Union, we'll clear it for sale in our country. That way, low-income countries can benefit from high-income countries, which is nice. As far as employers, I think that the companies that I worked for over the years are good, modern employers. They respect employees very much. Employees are generally very pleased with their jobs. There's always a very good work environment. There's a social club if you like social events. If your social club is very active, you may have a whole bunch of social events organized. So yeah, working in industry to me has been very enjoyable. And I think it's generally a very good work environment. I will just finish my presentation with this sentence here at the bottom of this slide by saying that it makes me feel very good that the work I have done has been used in the treatment of hundreds of millions of patients worldwide for the past 3 decades. I just feel really good about this. I feel like I did my share and I participated in society and I contributed to the community, to the radiation oncology community. So I'm going to stop here and say thank you, and I will be happy to answer your questions, I guess, at the end or now if you want, but I think we're going to hold the questions till the end. So thank you.
Thank you. So now we'll move on to our third and final speaker, and then we'll open up the floor for some questions. I can share my screen.
And can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Good. Well, while you're pulling up my slides, I apologize for holding up the whole thing. I was having all kinds of technical issues this morning. Could have done with somebody from industry.
Michel, could you stop sharing your screen?
Sorry.
No problem. Thank you.
Sorry. It looks like I'm still sharing, or am I not?
It looks like you're still sharing.
How do I do this? Escape.
Excellent.
Okay, good.
Great, thank you.
Confirming you can see your slides?
Yeah, I can. Thank you.
Excellent. I will do a quick intro and then we'll get started. So our third and final speaker today is Richard Amos, presenting from the perspective of academia. He is an associate professor and lead for translational proton therapy physics at University College London in the UK. He trained as a clinical scientist in London. He worked in radiotherapy physics across the UK NHS, as well as Cancer Care Ontario, and managed the ion microbeam facility at the Gray Laboratory studying radiation bystander effects. He then joined Loma Linda University Medical Center in 2002, and then took a senior role at MD Anderson in 2005, where he helped to develop and implement a major proton therapy center, which included the first USA proton pencil beam scanning system, which contributed to approaches that really underpin the modern proton pencil beam planning and delivery in the world today. Since returning to London in 2013, he has led efforts in both NHS proton therapy, development and translational research. He serves on numerous national and international committees, is an associate editor of the British Journal of Radiology, and has extensive scholar and educational record. Lastly, he is a chartered physicist and scientist and a fellow of the Institute of Physics and Engineering in Medicine. With that, take it away. Thank you, Richard.
All right, thank you very much. So as this is a webinar that's aimed at early career people, I thought that I've had an unusual path to be in the specific role that I'm in now. So I thought I would highlight that there are different paths to getting to where you want to be. So with this slide here, this is indeed summarizing my career path. In fact, I meant to put 1994 as the first date. I'm older than I remembered. But anyway, so I did a clinical residency in the National Health Service in London, and trained very much as a clinician in medical physics. I then had a period of time where I worked as a licensed medical physicist in the NHS in the UK, and also Cancer Care Ontario in Canada. But then I took a sidestep for a couple of years and worked pretty much as a research assistant at the Gray Laboratory, which is the laboratory where the Gray was defined, the unit, and worked with radiobiologists as a physicist supporting their research, but it certainly gave me a flavor for working in a research environment. From there, I then returned to the clinic. Sorry, can you go back? Thanks. Where I started to work at Loma Linda in California in proton therapy. Loma Linda was the world's first hospital-based proton facility, so that it was sort of a good place to learn and to get it into a field of medical physics very early relative to other people in medical physics. And then, as my introduction suggested, I moved on to open a new facility in MD Anderson. I returned to London to open a new facility in London, and then I've transitioned into academia in sort of the last 10 years. Next slide. So, as the research assistant for those few years where I sidestepped out of my medical physics career, I dabbled in ion microbeam research, and that was a catalyst for enabling me to get a job at Loma Linda in proton therapy, because I brought to the table a combination of working with ion beams and being a licensed clinical medical physicist. Next slide. So that led me to be very early in the field of proton beam therapy, which certainly has helped me transition from clinical practice to academia, because there was nothing routine about proton therapy when I got involved. And so for many years, clinical practice was always problem solving and working on fairly novel problems. Next slide. So my journey from Loma Linda to London is showing here for the aging process, which is the unfortunate part. But next slide. But there was a technical change that went from the way that protons are delivered from broad beam to pencil beam scanning delivery. And that is another point in my career where you contribute to very novel technical developments that require a research approach rather than a routine clinical approach, and involves an awful lot of collaboration with industry. So previous speakers have talked about the collaboration between government, academia and industry, and that's certainly true. And certainly this work involved a lot of collaboration with industry. Next slide. So as a clinical physicist, then working at the forefront of a new type of evolving application of medical physics, you then sort of develop techniques that are very novel and publish. So even in the clinic, you start to develop an academic footprint. So for example, this was transitioning from the broad beam approach to the pencil beam approach in treating prostates. Next slide. And here I am with the team after we had just treated the very first fraction of treatment for the first patient in the United States ever to be treated with pencil beam scanning, and it was a prostate patient. Next slide. I'll go quickly through the next few slides here because they are just examples of the developmental work that I had to go into just routinely treating patients with this novel modality. So here's a treatment planning study to work out how to treat pediatric craniopharyngioma. Next slide. Many publications involving techniques developed for breast cancer. Next slide. Which culminates in publishing advice for newcomers into the field as a professional body on how to move forward with treating, in this case, breast cancer with protons. Next slide. The same here with GI cancers. Next slide. And again, treating a pancreas. So these series of slides are just to highlight how your clinical practice, becoming an expert in something clinically, can certainly allow you to move in an academic direction. Next slide. And even when I had finished working in the clinic and then purely working in academia, the area of research that I'm engaged in is still solving clinical problems. But in pure academia, in a way, you have the opportunity, the collaborations and the time to work on even more complicated issues that can translate back to improving clinical practice. Next slide, please. And then the next one, I'll skip this in the interest of time. So another particle therapy is moving in a direction these days to deliver something called flash radiotherapy. This was a clinical trial that was done by a clinical group to do the first clinical trial in the world for flash. So next slide. But to enable the FDA to allow that trial to go forward, traceable calibration had to be established at flash dose rates. Now, the first speaker was talking about the experiences from the National Standards Laboratory in Canada. This was a collaboration between the clinical group in Cincinnati who conducted the trial, myself and others at UCL as academics with clinical expertise, and then the National Physical Laboratory in the UK, which is the equivalent of the lab in Canada, a government-funded lab, to develop traceable and accurate calibration to enable flash to be delivered safely. So this is again a perfect example, not with industry at this point, but with other clinical groups and government-funded labs to collaborate on research. Next slide. And next slide again, that's related to the same thing. And again, here's a photograph of us having finished all of the calibration work that allowed that first flash trial to move forward. Next slide. So as an experienced proton physicist from the clinic, we are now contributing to developing ideas of how we can deliver flash from a treatment planning point of view with particles to take advantage of the characteristics of protons in the best way possible. Obviously, you're not going to go into details in this talk. Next slide. And ironically, some of the ideas that we are putting forward come from the fact that I have over 20 years experience of protons in the clinic using the old techniques and not the pencil beam scanning techniques, but also the old techniques. And it turns out that using some of those techniques will allow us to move forward with using the Bragg peak for flash therapy. Again, no time for the details, but it shows how that clinical background can be very important in translational research. Next slide. So another thing I've noticed in my journey through proton therapy, from Loma Linda to MD Anderson to London, is over 30 or 40 years of developing these machines, they still all use the same high energy beam. Next slide. Now there's a need to make proton therapy cheaper so more people can have access to it. These are two examples of innovations. One is a smaller machine in a single room, and the other is now treating patients in an upright position, so perhaps you don't need a gantry. However, none of these ideas still deal with the high energy. So next slide. So collaborating with industrial partners, I've been leading some work to try to come up with clinical ways of using lower energies to treat protons, with a view of that leading to cost savings. Next slide. This is a more example of the same work, but next slide, please. But what I'm highlighting here is some of the early work I've done in this field. I am now able to work with students, which is a very valuable resource, in academia, are the students that you get to work with. So here is a photograph from literally 2 weeks ago, where I got to present a student who I'd supervised her master's degree thesis for, and as you can see the thesis title, in democratizing proton therapy. So she is extending the work that I'm interested in. She was a good student. She won an award for her efforts, and you can see how that allows you to pull other people into your research, and whilst you're training them, they are building on your research goals. Next slide. So the next couple of slides are really to highlight big science, something I never would have been involved in had I purely stayed in the clinic, trying to highlight that my career has gone from clinical to academic. And as a clinically experienced academic now, I get to bring that expertise to large projects. So this is an effort in the UK to develop a laser-powered particle accelerator for radiobiology research. My role is in looking at translatability of this technology, but I'm working with biologists, chemists, accelerator physicists, mathematicians, which is a very exciting area to be in, or a group to work with, and I'm bringing a very different perspective to this area. And only because I've built up some footprint now as an academic am I involved in such large-scale projects like this, but I still bring clinical experience in to this effort. Next slide. And I just got off a plane a few hours ago from a meeting about the slide you're looking at here. I am also involved in a very large project that's a doctoral network across Europe, which will be 14 PhD students working on looking at the multi-scale phenomena of radiation damage. This is not just to do with radiotherapy, but radiation's interacting with humans, even in space travel and all sorts of things. But again, my role is that clinical translation person. So the project that I'll be leading will be for ion therapy, and I will be collaborating with industry actually to try to translate some of the work that we do here into treatment planning, potentially for improving accuracy with predictions of outcomes for ion beam therapy. So again, just trying to emphasize, as you become more and more of an academic, you can be involved in very large projects, but bringing your niche into that project. Next slide. So pros and cons. Opportunities in academia, you get to contribute to the future developments in medical physics, of course, and that I very much enjoy. You get to work with large multidisciplinary groups, and you get to, as I've just said, you get to apply your niche or your specific expertise to rather large projects. Lots of collaboration with industry and government, highlighted by the previous two speakers, but also with those who are still purely in clinical practice. Lots of collaboration there, and it is the clinic that brings you the problems to solve, and it is my clinical experience that I bring to the research that I do. And something I personally enjoy a lot is teaching and supervision of students. I mean, teaching is a great way to learn your own field. You know, you don't really know what you're doing until you try to explain it to somebody else, I think. And sometimes you get a brilliant student that comes along that certainly takes your research forward. Challenges are funding. There's no defined or constant supply of funding into academia. You're always writing grants to get funding. You can put a lot of work into writing a grant and it not be funded, even though it's a great idea, a great project, lots of data in your grant. But if somebody else has written a better grant and they get the funding, yeah, that's tough. There's a very tough thing to get involved with. And the idea of publish or perish, that hasn't impacted me because I've become sort of senior as a clinical physicist, contributing to research, and now as an academic I'm sort of supervising those who are junior academics, but I didn't take their path, so I've never really been in the publish or perish situation myself. But it is particularly difficult, I think, for young academics. There is an expectation to publish. Promotion often unfairly, I think, looks at numbers of papers, citations and things like that. You can see that my citations from Google Scholar accessed yesterday are there. They are not particularly big numbers for what I would call a really prolific, successful academic, but they are not bad for somebody who started out as a purely clinical trained medical physicist. So last slide, please. Yeah, so my advice for a research career is train either clinically or academically. You know, the postdoc route versus the clinical residency route can still lead you to the same place. Find your niche and develop an expertise in it. You know, I jumped into proton therapy 20 odd years ago. It's now you know, much more common, but I got in there a long time ago, so I sort of found my corner of the field. Contribute to clinical research and development. So even in the clinic, you know, if you find a problem in the clinic, solve it and write something about it and see if you can't publish a small paper, technical note or anything, but always be willing to stay after 5 o'clock in the evening and solve a problem. What's really important is seek out good mentorship, and that was mentioned earlier. That's invaluable to have mentorship across the board, and work hard and collaborate. collaborate with any. If anybody ever reaches out to me and says, do I want to work on something, I always say yes before I've even really thought about it, because I'll then realize I'll work out how hard that'll be later. Right, I'm sorry that I've held everybody up, but willing to take questions, and thank you.
Great, thank you very much to all of our speakers. Very interesting talks. We could go through a few questions with our remaining time. We're pretty close to 11 on my end, but I think we have time for a few questions. To get started off, one question I had was regarding international collaboration. This could be specific to each sector, academia, government, or industry. Are there any limitations or hurdles you have to overcome to engage in international collaboration within your sector? Maybe we could start with Richard.
No, not really. Some grant funding mechanisms state this is for the UK or the US, or you know, the rules of who funds you is something you have to work within the envelope of. Brexit didn't help with the European issue, but we're not going to get political. But in the main, not really, no. I mean, I know we're running late, so I'm not going to. I'll let others answer that, but not really.
So I can
maybe
speak from
James, you want to jump in?
Yeah, so from the standards lab point of view, I mean, most developed nations have their own national metrology institutes and develop their own standards, whether primary or otherwise. There are only so many techniques that are considered primary, and so you can have several nations working on very similar detector technologies, and there's just a constant exchange of knowledge there going on. So maybe not so formal collaboration as you would think of it in, say, terms of academics, like co-authorship, so on and so forth. But I mean, inter-comparisons, you know, everything is done kind of on an international scale from that perspective.
I'm not sure that I have anything to add to this. I mean, for me at Elekta, at least, I collaborated with people all around the world, and I've never seen any international boundaries anywhere. Whenever there is one, people up above me handle the boundary-related issues, and I just focus on the science. And international collaboration is no different from national collaboration or collaborating with my neighbors.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. One question we have from the audience. They've mentioned collaboration with external researchers. They're interested in how you support industry academia collaboration. Could you elaborate on how early career researchers or students can be involved in such collaboration? That builds on a question I had, which is, in your sector, have you seen a lot of people kind of transitioning from government to industry to academia? Do you think there's difficulties to that, or have you seen that as kind of a common route people take in your sector?
Yeah, no, I haven't seen difficulties. In my own experience and with some of the young researchers that I've been involved with, we can reach out to industry, and industry will fund research, you know, in fairly small projects, like that example I gave of when we went to Cincinnati to do their calibration. It was the company that funded both UCL and our standards lab. It was a relatively small grant, enough to do that job. It's not a program grant, but it funded the young researchers to get to travel to, you know, so there's lots of collaboration and you know, and opportunities to seek small amounts of funding from vendors to help them develop their technology and application of it.
Yeah, I will comment. I think it's a comment that's similar to what you've been saying. Is I have seen clinical physicists move into industry, but I have not seen too many industry physicists go back into the clinics. It sounds like you got to get your, you got to keep up your skills in the clinic, and for some reason people don't move back or don't move the other way too much. Maybe because industry is much better than academia. I don't know. I've seen a number of clinical people move into industry, and not so many people from industry move back into academia afterwards. I guess you don't publish a lot of papers when you're in industry, like I said, and that sometimes doesn't help getting grants. You need to have a big background. You need to have a lot of papers. And so if you come from an industry background to go back into academia, that might be a more difficult move to make. But it's certainly doable, because I have a very good friend of mine that many people probably know. His name is Dr. Todd McNutt. He's at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore. I worked with him at Philips for a number of years. He was the best teacher I've ever had, probably. And he moved from industry to academia. And he became a very, very prestigious medical physicist. He's somebody who's very, very brilliant, has a lot of ideas. He has vision and skills, and you can move one way or the other. It's definitely possible.
Yeah, just speaking from my personal experience, there have been some instances of researchers within government moving to academia. But to be honest, our turnover rate it's virtually zero. Once you go government, you don't go back.
Great. I'm just monitoring for any questions from the chat. Do you have anything to add, Antonio?
I think we have covered all the questions, and we are quite running out of time. So maybe we can thank again all of our speakers.
Great. Yeah, thank you everyone for attending. We had some really great talks, and I think opened a lot of people's eyes to different career opportunities in the medical physics field.
Being as my slide is still there with my email address on, yeah, people can email me any questions if they want. I know I made everybody late. I could have done with somebody from industry to get my laptop going.
No problem. Great. With that, I will end the webinar for today. Again, thank you to all of our speakers, and thank you to everyone for attending in the audience.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Bye.